how does Xi get rid of his opponents? Is it jail them, remove them from power? Is he a bit less aggressive than Putin, or more so?
Well, until recently, I thought he would only do the jail thing, but Li Keqiang, the former premier, mysteriously had a heart attack while he was swimming or something like that. You know, so I think he's borrowing some part from the Putin playbook.
What did they say when they purged those 9 generals? Did they say anything publicly?
Well, the reason was corruption, right? But we all understand corruption, like everyone's corrupt. How is that a reason for...
They're still using that as a reason for all these purges. Yeah. And when they purge them, are they jailing them or just decommissioning?
Well, so here's the funny thing. We don't know if by purging these generals, are they still alive or not? It's just on paper, we know that these people are gone, but we don't really know if they're still alive or not. There's some again, rumors saying that some of them might have died already, but there's no way to confirm that, right? So you can only assume that these people are alive.
What's that? What's the top you have? The red and yellow one.
This thing here?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? So Winnie the Pooh costume.
You're using it as props on your channel?
Yeah, well, I hung it up because I needed some color in the background, but yeah, no, I did it.
That's the best.
Do you know the meme, right? About the whole thing?
No, what's the meme?
So for some reason, people started memeing that Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh, and then it got like restricted in China for a while, and it just became a running meme. So it's
they restricted what, Winnie the Pooh memes, or what exactly?
Like Winnie the Pooh itself, the character.
The show.
I think
really?
It's okay now. It's okay now, but it was for a while. You weren't allowed to post about it. Yeah.
That's insane. That's censorship to another level. Like, I understand if they start censoring, like Russia censors things related to the Ukraine war, or they censor things that criticize the government, but censoring things that attack Xi Jinping on a personal level, comparing him to Winnie the Pooh, it's crossing the line. It's getting a bit childish.
They don't really look alike either. That's the issue. So I think he's gotten over it, because now I'm pretty sure you can post about it. But this was
he's gotten over it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm too old for this.
I swear, he's the leader of the second biggest country, second biggest military in the world. You'd want to have thick skin for dealing with such things.
Yeah.
But I think your t-shirt says it all, and we're going to talk about Taiwan, I think, to understand what your stance is, for the audience to understand where your position is. But let's actually, no, that doesn't say. People that want unification, reunification might still say, damn, I love Taiwan. So maybe it doesn't give away your position on China. But I was going through your channel, and usually my China interviews I cover what's happening today, the rare earth restrictions, the Chinese military, AI developments, the summit. But then when I started going through your channel, you have a really interesting angle on the country, and you mainly focus on Xi Jinping's control and the threats that he faces internally. Because there's always talks. I remember since I was a kid, I was raised in Australia. And since I was a kid, it's always about power struggles or potential coup in China, because obviously Australia and China are very close. So I want to ask you a lot of questions on this. I want you to go through kind of all the different theories. What's fact, what's fiction, what's possible to be, what's potentially true. Because we hear the same things about Putin all the time. But before that, maybe you can give a crash course to the audience. How did Xi Jinping get so much power? How did he rise up the ranks since the Fujian days and get to where he is today?
Right. So people probably know a little bit already. His father was a revolutionary, important person, not important as much in terms of, the achievements inside the party as, let's say, Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping. So, but after 1949, obviously, people thought that Chairman Mao was the paramount leader. During the Cultural Revolution, his father, Xi Jinping's father, was casted to the countryside. And from there, Xi himself also went to the countryside, and essentially through, despite him being casted out during that time, there's still some loyalty status within the being like a member of this, the revolutionary elders, so to speak. So he used his father's name, used his own as you mentioned, in the Fujian area, cultivating his own sort of following, developing his own talents, to eventually in 2013 becoming the successor or the next in line for power. Now, so during the time before 2013 or 2012, he was more like, if you flip through some of the old footage of him, you see that he's always, he acted quite differently. So the running suspicion was that the CCP leadership at the time didn't think that Xi was somebody who had this great ambition within sort of climbing the political rank. They thought he was somebody who could act as a almost like a puppet for the established factions. Little did they know she had his own sort of agenda. So, according to a scholar exiled in Australia, actually, this professor used to be Xi Jinping's drinking buddy. What he told me was that his name is Yuan Hongbing. You guys can go find writings from him. But he told me that even when he was drinking with Xi Jinping, he felt that she always had this sort of bloodthirst within him for power and his own sort of vision for the country. So eventually, she through this sort of, when they decide who to succeed the power, it's always through these closed door negotiations. The Jiang Zemin faction, the Shanghai gang, right? They and the Youth League, which is sort of more like the officials at the time who were in control, namely from Hu Jintao, the former CCP leader. They were against each other fighting for power, and she was almost like the product of somebody who appeared more neutral between the two parties. It wasn't the person that they had in mind, but he was somebody who they thought they could influence from either side. So that was sort of the concession made in terms of who gets to pick the next successor. So this a little bit goes back to Deng Xiaoping's time. So during Deng Xiaoping's time, Deng Xiaoping was all about the reform and opening up. And before he retired from power, he named Hu Jintao as the successor. But because Hu Jintao at the time was too young in terms of his political career, they put in Jiang Zemin as sort of the temporary stepping stone. And then, but when Zhang got into power, Zhang obviously developed his own power base. And so by the time that Hu Jintao came into power, Zhang still had a lot of influence. So it almost was a culmination of the two sides fighting against each other in 2012 that Xi Jinping got into power as sort of the two sides coming together to say that, this is the person that we can both kind of support. But little did they know, once she got into power, she started this whole anti-corruption campaign to basically target both sides to weaken both of their influences. And so fast forward to a decade later, in the 2022 20th National Congress that we saw, Hu Jintao getting escorted out in front of the cameras, right? That was sort of, we saw the height of Xi's total control. So it took him a decade to basically get that.
Interesting. I want to talk about that clip because I've seen that video a few times. I've never looked into it, with that former leader just being carried away after Xi
Yeah.
Jinping ordering someone, can you just take him away?
Yeah.
But the purge really started in 2018. And it was like an anti-corruption purge. It's always about it always uses anti-corruption. You saw that in Saudi, in Russia, China.
Yeah.
What happened exactly? So you had those two different factions that were fighting, and they chose Xi Jinping to be the leader, as they thought they could both influence him. He could be someone in the middle, a neutral person. But what he did over the years, where he slowly condensed power around him and started getting rid of anyone that wasn't loyal. I think it was beginning even prior to 2018, correct?
Yes. It basically started early. It started once he got into power in 2013 through just, they go through the formalities, right? For the first 5 years, so from 2013 to 2018, it was really about him consolidating his own power base. So there's really two lines of purges going on. There's one in the military, then there's also the ones in the political system. So in the beginning, the first 5 years, it was to weed out the influence of the Zhang faction. So you saw a lot of the top guys within the Zhang faction getting purged. The former vice chairman of the military, Xu Caiho, and I keep forgetting the other guy's name, but they were both the vice chair of the military. They were punished. Zhou Yongkang, who was one of the top allies of Jiang Zemin, also was jailed. You had people like Bo Xilai, who also that was much earlier, but this is all kind of around that same time. So that was within the first 5 years. So and then from 2018 onwards to 2022, it was to clear up the Youth League faction or the Hu Jintao faction. So that was another wave of purge. Essentially, what he did was he reshuffled the people who were in power, and then even the people who he couldn't get rid of in those 5 years, he would start to hollow them out in terms of having their titles, but they don't really have those powers anymore. Because before Xi Jinping was, it was called collective leadership, right? Every top Politburo standing committee member controlled a little bit of the country. Like this guy had the control of the finance, that guy controlled the judicial system, that type of thing. And then what she did was he also at the same time started to formulate these task forces or committees. And he'd always be the chair of the committee. So through these committees, let's say, you have a committee on trade or a committee on finance. The person that would be responsible for finance up at the top got his power split within the committee. And so that committee became sort of the ruling power within that part of the country. So you see, these type of things happen one after another. So by the time that the 20th Party Congress rolled around in 2022, she essentially held all the power because he consolidated all of it through all these little committees and whatnot, and put his own people were in charge. So you have these like deputy level people who have more power than the I guess the head of the department, that type of thing. So and then in the end of it, he built so much a hate from the other sides that he's made enemies everywhere, within the military, within the party, and whatnot.
That was back then, or are you talking today?
That's just continuous. That's still ongoing. That's
So he's got a lot of.
But in
You're
the
saying he's got a lot of enemies now that are in
yeah,
positions
he's
of
got
power.
no. So
Not anymore.
that's a great yeah. So I'll clarify. He removed those people from positions of power, but their influences, because they're huge factions in China, right? Those people who still have a lot of influence, even though they don't have positions of power, they're still trying to fight against Xi, although to less degrees. But that hate towards Xi is still there.
How does he get rid of them? So Putin is known to have people get poisoned or fall out of the
Yeah.
balcony, or recently having their plane crash. How does Xi get rid
Mhm.
of his opponents? Is it jail them, remove them from power? Is he a bit less aggressive than Putin, or more so?
Well, until recently, I thought he would only do the jail thing, but Li Keqiang, the former premier, mysteriously had a heart attack while he was swimming or something like that. So I think he's borrowing some part from the Putin playbook on
How
how
old
to
was
get
he?
rid of your
How old was he then?
60 something, all close to 70. He retired though. He stepped down in 2022. So after that guy stepped down, he didn't usually. So there used to be this rule within the CCP. It's called no matter how bad, trying to translate it in like plain words, but it's basically like no matter how bad things get between us fighting, we should never see blood spilled, in the sense that like we can fight against like power politics, right? But we should never kill the other people, because that
That's a
steps
good
out of the
rule.
boundary. Yeah, it's like their little mafia rule or some sort. So
Okay.
but she kind of broke that rule with Li Keqiang, because he eliminated the guy after
You're pretty
after he
confident.
retired.
You're pretty confident it wasn't a heart attack.
No, because dude, these people, they have the best medical care in the world. They got their organs that they can change. They got the medical exams every year. There's no way that they didn't find this guy with heart conditions at that age, and then just
Mm.
let him be.
Yeah, you talk about Project 981, which is really interesting. We saw
Yeah,
that leaked audio
yeah,
between Putin and Xi. We'll talk about that later. Just going
yeah.
back to so we have the purge. We talked about how he got rid of those people. Because China's a pretty massive country. So I'm trying to figure out, like, being able, because Russia's huge and Putin struggled.
Yeah.
We saw the kind of split with Lavrov in the recent days, and there's been power struggles. You saw the Wagner mutiny, and that's Russia, a much smaller country than China. How successful has Xi Jinping been in that purge, and how much control does he have over the party now? Because he's removed the
So,
term limit. He's a
yep.
leader for as long as he's alive. But we haven't seen anything like we saw 2 years ago in Russia, but there's always talks of purges. And there's even been reports of a military leader since the early days before he became the leader, who was demoted just last year and vanished
Yeah,
last month. So there's still
yeah.
questions question marks now. We have in Russia a lot of generals being fired over the last 2 years, but Russia's at war. But in China, there's also similar reports. We're seeing all these different leaders get arrested. There's been a few, I think, also in the military, there's a few generals that were, I think it was generals that were arrested. Can you maybe expand on that?
So it's a very big topic, and I think we'll need to kind of go into more depth on this. But
Please, please. It's a
so
fascinating topic.
yeah, I'll split this into two stages: before 2024 and after 2024. So before 2024, I would say that if you asked me back then, she was in total control. She had absolute power on the military, everything. The reason he could do that was because we saw in 2022, the people that walked out onto that stage, the 20th Party Congress, the standing committee members, everybody was his own people that he brought up with them throughout all these years. You know, in Fujian, in Shanxi, other parts of where he had been. After 2024, summer, specifically the summer of 2024, it was something called the third plenum. And during this time, there were some rumors about him getting a stroke, but obviously he came out, he looked fine, whatever, he was healthy, right? And then a few months later, he had this state visit from the Vietnamese general secretary. And there we saw this photo of him. You can find this online as well, that he had this 90-degree shave on the back of his hair around the neck area. That indicated that he went through some surgery or of some sort. It likely impacted his brain. So might be a stroke surgery. It might be something related to his brain. But whatever the case may be, he was healthy enough to walk, right? But so this is where I thought was the turning point, because just months later, in about November of 2024, you mentioned those generals that got purged last month, right? One of the top Xi allies in the military, Miao Hua, was rumored to have disappeared. So Miao Hua is among the 9 top generals that were on that list recently. Miao Hua is Xi Jinping's. She promoted him he was in the Navy. He became Xi's. They're called political commissars in the military, which essentially is like almost like a party, like a watchdog, not really watchdog, but like a party politician person inside the military. Their goal is to basically make the military more loyal to the CCP, that kind of thing. So he was a political commissar.
Okay,
Another
that's pretty
guy,
important. So his position,
yeah,
hold on, his
very
position
important.
is to make the military loyal to the CCP. Is a very, very sensitive position.
Yeah, it's an ideological position, essentially. So let's say you have a Chinese warship, right? You have the commander of the ship, then you have the political commissar of the ship. So one commander is the military commander, the commissar is the politics or the party commander of that ship. So, let's say the commander says we're going to fire on the other enemy ship. The political commissar might say that, is this according to the party's ideology or something like that? It's like there's a double commanding system. Yeah.
And who's more powerful? Is it the political commanding system that's on top of the military?
In those kind of like fast reaction situations, maybe the military commander would still have the final say. But in a regular sort of setting, usually the political commissar is the one that's more in control, because because the PLA is the party controls the gun, right? The party is supposed to, because the PLA is not the Chinese military, it is the People's Liberation Army, which is the CCP's military. Yeah, so he's been purged. He Weidong, another guy, he was the vice chair of the CMC, Central Military Commission. He got purged. These are all Xi Jinping's loyal people, right? So that's why after 2024, I refuse to believe that Xi's power is still as stable as he was before, because there was another thing that happened during the 2 sessions earlier this year in March. In March this year, there was a video that you can find on X right now. Zhang Youxia, who is the second in command of the military, when she walked by during the closing ceremony, Zhang had his back against Xi. When you compare to that same session last year in 2024, the year before that, Zhang was he had turned around, waited for Xi to walk by before he went back to do his things. Formality and these type of things are very important for a dictatorship. If Putin walked by and Lavrov didn't look at him, I think we'd all think that something happened, something happened between them. So it's kind of like that. And so in my current belief is that the Xi Jinping situation is that he has lost the control of the military, uh, and that people who are against Xi are clawing back power through Zhang Youxia. And I'm happy to expand on my sort of thinking and arguments later, but right now, I don't think Xi is 100% in control of the whole
Can,
power base that he has concentrated.
can you expand? I'm following this. You're explaining it really, really well. So I want you to expand and continue going down that path. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe? Who's that person? Sorry, that's the main. You mentioned a name that's like the main opponent to Xi Jinping. What's his name?
Zhang Youxia.
Zhang Youxia. And
So
he's the guy
yeah,
from the early days.
he's yeah, so he came into the top echelon of the military in 2018.
Okay.
And he's been by the side of Xi for since then. Uh,
And what is his
but
position now?
he's the vice chairman of the Central Military
Yeah,
Commission.
you
So Xi
mentioned him.
Jinping
And
is
he
the chair.
hasn't he
He's the
hasn't
vice
been
chair.
purged. He hasn't been purged yet.
No, he hasn't been purged.
Okay.
So so okay, so I'll start from this logic that I have, which is that of the 9 generals that were purged last month, you had the second vice chairman, which is the guy below Zhang Youxia, right? Xi Jinping promoted him specifically to design the invasion of Taiwan. Um, so He Weidong is the guy that got purged. Mao Hua, I mentioned, is the second guy. That was the political commissar.
Yeah.
Then, of the other 7, one is the political commissar of the Navy. The other one is the political commissar of the Army. So those are 4 pretty important people already. Then the 5th guy is the commander of the Eastern Theater, which is the theater that's responsible for invading Taiwan. So that is situated in the east coast of China, southeast coast of China. So that specific area is literally the most important operation asset for the Taiwan plan. So the commander of that has been purged as well. Also, the commander of the rocket force, who had just been put into place less than 2 years, or maybe just about 2 years. And then there's also the commander of the armed police, which is like the military police, basically. And then there's 2 others I can't really remember
That's it,
exactly.
but David, that's a lot of people. Like these are, and
Yeah,
these are, it kind of reminds me of Wagner, because Wagner is like, you talk about
yeah,
the Taiwan arm, the arm that was responsible, the arm of the military that's responsible for the invasion of Taiwan. Makes it seem like it's an independent arm with a certain mission. Like Wagner had a certain mission to
yeah,
target certain territories in Ukraine that the
yeah.
Russian military could not succeed in. Um, so there hasn't been any purges, military purges of that size ever, or in 2018 was
There
similar?
were So that's actually the important observation you just made. So take the rocket force commander, right? I said hasn't been in power for more than 2 years. The last purge that Xi Jinping did was specifically targeting the rocket force. That was in 2022. So back then, like 50 plus commanders and generals of all different ranks had been purged. So it was literally Xi Jinping himself. He purged all those people that were in place. Then he put in this new guy for less than 2 years. And then he found out that this new guy also had problems. The new
Who?
guy that he purged didn't even come from the rocket force. He came from the Navy. So specifically because of problems within the rocket force, which by the way controls things like the ICBMs and strategic missiles and all those things, right? Um, he thought that the guys who were in there before weren't loyal enough, so he put somebody from the Navy in charge of the rocket force, just so because if you show loyalty enough, it doesn't really matter if you know the rockets or not. At least you're loyal to Xi. So that was the thinking, or at least that's what happened. And then fast forward to today, he's been purged. So I hear a lot of these scholars talk about how the current purges are still Xi's own doing and that it's loyalty above all. I begin to question, because if you brought up these people who had been with you since the early days, like a lot of these guys, the commanders, come from the 31 base in Fujian, which Xi Jinping was there during his local times as an official in Fujian. If you had problems with these people, you could have done this. You could have stopped their promotion, or you could have found out that what they were doing wasn't in your favor long before this. Now, a lot of people are going to argue that, okay, well, Prigozhin didn't really, turn against Putin until like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right? Maybe they were loyal friends or whatnot. But that's the other issue, which is that if you read the punishment or the crimes of these generals, they said that they had been disloyal to the central command. They had been disloyal to the party and disloyal to the structure of which the party controls the gun. So what they're essentially saying is that these guys tried to start a coup. That's what they were saying. A coup
So they
large
say,
enough.
continue, large
Yeah.
enough.
So they claim that these 9 generals, plus many more lieutenant generals, had been involved in a coup so big that it is going against the entire party. It is disobeying the structure of the military party relationship, or whatever the case may be. And yet it involved this guy who had been in power for just 2 years. So for some reason, this man came into power, and within 2 years, he decided to join this massive coup. And it just so happens that all of these people belong to Xi Jinping's camps. So it makes you wonder, okay, is scenario one, is every general in the military just disloyal to Xi, no matter who he promotes? Or scenario two, that maybe these people were involved in a coup that Xi Jinping planned, but were not successful. And so that's where it goes back to my point, which is that the reaction, the actions from Zhang Youxia, the first vice chair, who I believe is against Xi right now, is so weird that he would not, look at Xi when this whole meeting happened in March, and then for him to not be purged, and then all of Xi's own people had been purged, is very strange to me, because if there's any loyalty issue, Zhang Youxia has been in that position the longest. If it was corruption issues, Zhang Youxia would be the most corrupt. Uh,
Okay.
and
So
then
John,
also,
so just quickly,
Mhm.
so you got these 9 generals that were purged. Now you did say something and I didn't understand. You said maybe she was part of the coup. What do you mean? Who's the target of the coup? She was part of the coup.
So that's what I'm thinking, is that she lost power to Zhang Youxia in the military, and he wanted to
Oh
claw
wow.
back power. So that's
Okay.
where I say the coup is from Xi, because there was actually, I recently covered this. There was a rumor coming from 5 different sources. So 5 different Chinese commentators have brought up similar, not the exact precise details of the same, but similar sources of, there was a secret um, private army type that was gathering outside of Beijing. Now, this private army type had a lot of detail and operational issues that I think needs to be analyzed. But they all said the same thing, that there was a troop gathering outside of Beijing, about 20 kilometers away from Beijing, that involved a division-sized military operation. Not that it actually had like 10 to 20,000 troops in there physically, but it was something that they had been organizing that was about 10 to 20,000 people in
When
operations.
was when
Okay,
was that?
so this was no so exact time unsure, but this was sometimes between
Oh,
November of
recently.
2024 to,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
to March of
About
2025.
it.
So it actually
Okay.
lines up with that whole reaction from Zhang Youxia, why he is so different year to year from the meeting. But then, so what that tells me is, if, let's say, if these 9 generals were part of that coup, and that if there was actually this private army type of thing that was within Beijing, who would they serve? Who would be the person that this private army needs to serve? It wouldn't be Zhang Youxia, because if Zhang Youxia was still loyal to Xi, he wouldn't need a private army. But it would be Xi who needed something to fight back, because Zhang Youxia is in control. And then I think one of the most convincing aspect of my theory is that Xi Jinping, this time when he was giving the commission for the third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, right?
Hmm.
Fujian is the carrier that is very much Xi's own sort of answer to the West, right? It's his answer to the U.S. naval projection of power through the carrier strike groups. He's got the electromagnetic catapult, right? Whether that's actually going to be a good working technology or not, that's still kind of up to debate. But he's got that in there.
Which is the
He
first,
it's
warship, not a non-American warship to have that technology, correct?
Exactly. It's not nuclear powered. It's still diesel powered,
Yeah.
but still, that's next coming. But the point is, the reason why it's called the Fujian is because, one, obviously Fujian is the closest area to Taiwan, but second, also because Xi Jinping was in Fujian, and also because essentially this is Xi's own legacy in a ship, right? But yet you look at the video and you compare that to the previous 2 aircraft carrier launches. You see that it's much smaller in scale, much less people were there. Uh, he didn't examine the troops. There wasn't like this whole clapping and reception thing that happened. And overall, it didn't look like he was really getting the the right reception needed for somebody who is still in power, if you compare it to the previous 2. And in my opinion, that's really weird because this third one should be the most hyped up one, because this is,
Um,
the first one wasn't Xi, had nothing to do with Xi, because it was a Ukrainian ship that was essentially rebuilt into a Chinese carrier. The second one, the Shandong, was the first domestic one, right? But it was also started before Xi fully was in power. And then the third one was really the one that he personally oversaw. And yet somehow we're seeing a downplay of his achievements. So that alone, like, there's a lot of tiny details that slowly make me feel like that she is losing a lot of places within the military, at least. And because the military is essentially the core power for the paramount leader in China,
any
without the
dictator.
military control, yeah, any dictator essentially, uh, party controls the gun. So if the gun is no longer in the hand of the party, then he's no longer in control.
So they were open that these purges were because the generals were not putting the party above the military? Were they open about those reasons? Or there were rumors or reports?
I would
Or did they
say
give a
that,
reason? What did they say when they purged those 9 generals? Did they say anything
well,
publicly?
the reason was corruption, right? But we all understand corruption, like,
Yeah.
everyone's corrupt. How is
So
that a
they're still
reason
say
for?
they're still using that as a reason for all these
Yeah,
purges. And when they purge
yeah.
them, are they jailing them or just decommissioning?
Well, so here's the funny thing. We don't know if by purging these generals, are they still alive or not. It's just on paper we know that these people are gone, but we don't really know if they're still alive or not. There's some again rumors saying that some of them might have died already, but there's no way to confirm that, right? So you can only assume that these people are alive, just in
What
jail or something.
But why would Xi Jinping, assuming your theory is correct, why would he be losing
Mhm.
his grip on power, considering the economy is doing, it's not great, it's not perfect, but still doing pretty well. Technologically, we're seeing, at least from the outside, China advance a lot faster than the Western world. I just saw a stat today that China's catching up when it comes to the AI race, but more importantly, robotics. China has more robots than the industrial robots than the rest of the world combined. The list goes on. We see all these drone videos. So it seems that the economy is doing well. Why do you think he's having that resistance?
So I think it's hard to understand in the way that, like, we don't see it on the surface, right? Like, no matter what I'd say, she's still in power on the surface. Everything looks normal. But there is something called a Hua Guofeng model. So Hua Guofeng was somebody who was, before Deng Xiaoping. So after Chairman Mao died, he was the paramount leader. For 2 years, people thought he was normal. He was still in power or whatever. But then suddenly he said he's going to resign, and that Deng Xiaoping essentially became the paramount leader after. During those 2 years, people didn't realize that he had lost power because he was still having all those titles. He still controlled the military and everything. But it was until at one point that the state media started to downplay his titles and roles. That's when people started to say, "Oh, look, like, I didn't realize, but this guy had lost power." So I think what's happening right now is the same with Xi Jinping. Now, who exactly is causing this? Remember, I said that he might have had a stroke in summer of
Mm,
last year. I think what I believe what happened was during that time.
that's the image, by the way, of the shaved
Yes,
head
yes,
that
yes.
you told me about.
Yes. Yes, yes. There's some ways, shape, or form that the people who were against Xi Jinping clawed back power during that time. And then through we saw in next year, in spring of 2025, the most decisive answer that I can give is again the the video where Zhang Youxia doesn't look at Xi Jinping. Because
Yeah.
to me, that, like, anybody that knows a little bit about the Communist Party politics knows that formality and unison or unity is probably the most important thing. But I think what's happening right now is that the CCP's everybody in the CCP is all about preserving the party, and survival of the party. So on the surface, you will never notice that something has changed. Like the very credible information I got last month said that she had already stepped down, but because of the preservation of the party, he's still remaining in the role. For one of the major factors is obviously the meeting with Trump that he had to go to. Uh,
Oh wow,
so
you think there's a possibility that he's even lost power? That's how dire
okay,
things
so
are, at least in your view right now.
if if you read the recent meeting notes with Trump, right, the APEC meeting that they had, keywords like security wasn't mentioned a single time. Taiwan wasn't mentioned at all. The policy direction change is a 180-degree shift from the last decade that he's been in power. So, for example, right up until last year, Xi Jinping, like you compare that to the one he had with Biden in, I think it was in Peru, Lima. Yeah, last year in around the same time, Xi and Biden met in Peru. Forgot which meeting it was, at the G20 or something. But you compare the two different readouts. The one that he issued with Biden contained a lot of threats, like this is a red line. It's like security is the most important thing for the CCP. The country is like ready to step into a new role. Like all of these harsh, aggressive words that is she's known for, right? Wolf warrior diplomacy. Xi Jinping is very known for that. Had recently come down in a 180-degree turn when it comes to the meeting with Trump.
Do you
So
think it's possible that they're just playing, feeding Trump's ego or saying the right things so Trump is happy and Trump can call it a win? Is this political maneuvering? Is that a possibility, you think, or unlikely? How were they in Trump's first term? How did that compare?
well, in Trump's first term, they were like you still had the same stuff, like the Wolf Warrior stuff didn't go away, right? But
Mm.
you had, I think, in the first term, it was she had the audacity to lie about Trump. Like, remember the first trade deal, the phase one trade deal? They promised that they would buy all the soybeans, and they signed the agreement in the White House. And then when Liu He, the guy who was in the talks, went back to China, they just didn't buy anything. So because they knew that this was in 2020, and then the pandemic came after that, so that was done.
So
Like
you
they
think
they
the
didn't.
change, you think the 180 turn has nothing to do with Trump being president? It has something to do with something internal in the CCP.
That's what I believe right now. But
Okay.
let's see in 6 months, because China's not really good with their promises. So if the issue with fentanyl is still there, or if they're not buying enough soybeans, or if the rare earth issue is still, something that I saw something today that they're going to make a rule in which they exclude those U.S. companies with defense ties to the U.S. government, uh, to not sell
Mm.
them rare earth, right? So that, like, there's still a possibility. We'll find out within 6 months if this is just to make appeasement to Trump, or is something that they truly change. But so far, everything I've seen from all of the meetings between the defense ministers from the U.S. and China, the meetings between Trump and Xi themselves, uh, I'm seeing a dramatic shift back to their, so-called U.S. China is a lovey-dovey couple relationship type of thing. It's no longer like we're in a zero sum game. Like, I think that was the big term in the Biden era with China. It was like, no new Cold Wars, no zero sum games, but we have our red lines, we have our, things that you cannot touch. None of that was stressed with Trump. So I just don't think that Xi Jinping is somebody who, because you got to like answer to your domestic audience as well, right? If you're not being hard, you're not looking tough, it doesn't make you look good domestically. So I think that it really is strange to me why he wouldn't at least mention some of this, or
Okay.
it's omitted, even if he did mention it.
All right. So we're starting to touch on the meeting, the APEC meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping, as well as the Fujian um, announcement that you talked about earlier. Before that, you were talking about the Jintao video of him walking out. I know we're going back to the early part of the conversation. I do want to cover that quickly because it fascinates me. Why was he walked out? What's the story there? Because from what I remember, I saw the video a really long time ago. But Xi Jinping brings one of his aides, points at Hu Jintao, and then the aide just walks him out. What happened there?
So if you look at there's a long version. It starts with Hu and the person sitting left to Hu Jintao. They were looking at this file or booklet
Yeah.
that they had, and then that man was explaining to Hu what was happening. We don't know what they were talking about, but what it looked like to me was that Hu was caught by surprise of some sort, and then that's when the Xi Jinping ordered the escort to come and get him out. And then when he left, you saw that he tapped on the shoulder of Li Keqiang, who was the guy that died while he was swimming with a heart attack. And then the whole time, I think what was happening was that the booklet on the table was the list of the members of the 20th Party Congress, right? So because a lot of these people are decided in the backroom negotiation of who gets to go in, who comes out, who retires, and all those things. And I think the people that who wanted in weren't in, and we saw that afterwards. Obviously, people like who's proteges, who's close people, they weren't in the list.
Mm.
So everybody was Xi's people, and that was completely all dominated by Xi in that meeting. So I
Mm.
think he didn't know that this was happening, and so he started asking like, how come like my people weren't in here? And then when he got escorted out, you saw that everybody was like looking straight forward. Nobody dared to look back.
That's
I
insane.
think
Yeah, I
that's how
remember.
scary that Xi's power was back then. And then yeah, it honestly
How,
was shocking because even to yeah, go ahead.
why is it shocking? And I was going to ask you, how did people in China react? But why do you think it was? Can you explain why it was shocking?
Oh, I don't think people in China saw that video because there's like
Completely
zero
censored.
conversations. Yeah, zero
Jesus.
conversations about it. But it was shocking to us because even as people who care about China, you never see this type of stuff happening. This is not so. That's what I'm saying. Like, even if you're fighting for power, you don't spill blood, right? And it was like the beginning of showing how aggressive she had been towards controlling the people inside the party, and that was really the first time that you saw how different she was from the people before them in terms of power politics.
Well, he just escorted the leader, one of the leaders of the CCP, out of the room
Gave him zero
with no
respect as
respect.
somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Usually, like
crazy.
even Trump's respect to Biden was above what we saw here to Hu Jintao. Um,
Yeah,
s- Before we go into the aircraft carrier, the what's it called,
Fujian.
the Fujian. Uh, do you worry? And I was thinking about this as I was watching your videos. Where are you based? In the
I'm
US?
in the US. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, do you worry at all with all this coverage of China as they get more and more aggressive? And we've seen, I was talking to John Kiriakou, former CIA officer, and we're talking about the long arm of China and how China has, and I'm sure you've covered it, probably has, you know, little bases, mini bases, and office buildings, etc., where they target dissidents. So my question to you first: have you looked into the Chinese intelligence, their capabilities, what they're doing in
Um,
other countries, including the US? Have you faced any threats, or do you worry of any? Because you have a pretty big reach, one that's increasing, and you're very, very critical of the CCP.
I don't worry for two reasons. One, it's because I'm not the priority. English speaking people like me aren't the priority. They focus mostly on the Chinese influencers overseas. There's a huge
Fair point.
operations to silence those or to convert them, because simply I think the CCP isn't worried about you know a guy who's gonna topple their government from the United States, but they're
Yeah.
worried if they have Chinese people who listen to these people who are Chinese, speak Mandarin, they can bring in sort of change of hearts within China. And then the second reason is I actually think this is pretty interesting. So you're talking about like there's police stations in the New York City, for example. There's consulates out here. How come they don't kidnap you? I think it's really a fear driven tactic. So the more you fear them, the more it's more effective for them to target you. So if you got family back home, you got
That's a common one. Yeah,
interest.
they
Yeah,
threaten your family.
yeah. If you have material interest back home, they use those things to target you. I personally don't have any of those. Well, I do have family, but I don't have extensive ties to China in the sense that, like, so what, So they can't really
Um,
target people who don't have values of working with China. So that's why I think and they also kind of see me as an outlier because I mean, they also spend a lot of money on hiring foreign faces to promote China. So they think
Yeah.
that, it's just one guy out of hundred thousands of others who can kind of cover you up, right?
You made a video about I don't know if you were claiming that. I just saw the thumbnail about Speed, IShowSpeed,
Yeah.
potentially being funded by the CCP. What was your claim there? Do you think he might have been funded by the CCP or not? I didn't watch the video.
So, well, his editor tweeted out, or not his editor, his cameraman tweeted out that like they were paid by these agencies, tourist agencies in China. The tourist agencies in China, they're really funded by local tourist uh, ministries, which essentially is the Chinese government, to promote the local issues. But on top of that is to paint a great picture of China. So you often see this with a lot of those short videos on Instagram or even on X. They're like, I can't believe China looks like this. In a million years, I've never expected. And it's always the same thing. It's like the trains are fast. The city center is full of LED lights. And it's cheap here, right? I'm taking my US dollar. I'm coming here 1 to 7 exchange ratio, and I can get like so much stuff. It's always the same line. So if you look at the IShowSpeed streams, there's a lot of parts that were scripted. For example, he met with the guy who sings this like Chinese song, but then people found out that it wasn't his first encounter with this guy on stream. So it wasn't like this guy randomly just showed up. They had filmed a short video together before that. When he went to the Shaolin Temple, when he went to Beijing, he had one of the Chinese pop stars randomly just show up and like, hey, what's up, man? Like these type of things don't just randomly happen when you're in China. You don't walk around and you see people who are famous. They were specifically, working with the local organizers to make China look better. So whether or not he actually got paid, I don't know. According to his cameraman, it seems like they did get money, but that could also be something that he just randomly set out. But the very fact that he went to China and he got arranged to do all these, a lot of people were seeing that like this wasn't like a regular speech stream where he went to a country and just had random encounters with people, but it was like legitimately a lot of it was scripted.
But I used to go a lot. Do you speak Mandarin?
Yes.
Do you go much to China? If you go to China now, do you think you might face any legal issues or not
Yeah.
really?
Oh, definitely. I'll probably if I step into Beijing, I'll probably get arrested. The thing I found out was that apparently South Korea has also introduced a law. It hasn't passed yet, but anyone who criticizes foreign governments, including China, could get up to 5 years in jail. So like Korea is one of my favorite places I want to go. But there's a lot of
What the
places in
fuck is
Asia where
that?
I
That's
can't.
crazy.
That's
That's
recent,
crazy.
yeah. Introduced by the current ruling party. So it hasn't passed yet. I don't know if it'll pass. I don't even know if it's constitutional. But yes,
But that is
because they
crazy.
were
South
having
Korea
these.
is a beautiful country. Yeah, why? What
Yeah,
happened? Why is South Korea? Why would
I don't
you
know.
like if you're criticizing South Korea? I'd understand that's authoritarian. It's against free speech. I'm fighting for free speech around the world. But why would they prosecute you if you're criticizing a foreign government? Something's weird about
I don't
this.
know. I'm just reading. Yeah, I'm reading from the Chosun Daily. It says they've successfully proposed a bill targeting anti-China protest. Uh, so basically, if
Oh
you,
shit!
yeah, so
You need some focus on China. So this is mainly about China because I know China and South Korea have had a lot of friction. You talk about it in your video. A lot of South Koreans were targeted in China. Um, so what you think China pressured South Korea to then pressure
uh,
those that are criticizing China
I
potentially?
don't know. I mean, they could really the intention could be everything. It could be like we don't want to break unity from harmony between nearby neighboring countries, or it could be this is against this is racial whatever the case may be. They
That
they
sounds
can
like a bunch of
spin in
bullshit.
any
Like what
way,
is it? Like British hate speech laws. Um.
something like that.
Okay, so you think you'll be arrested if you go to China? I haven't been.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be balanced about China, but it's starting to worry me a bit. I've got a few countries I can't go to: Brazil, Pakistan, Romania's 50-50, just because of criticizing the governments there.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure about China. It's a tricky one. I'm trying to be balanced, even though I'm a believer in democracy. I'm trying to really understand and not judge. Um, but yeah, look, again, I'm a believer in free speech. Let's go to the military aspects of this. We've talked about the Fujian aircraft carrier. So as you said, it's the first non-US carrier with electromagnetic catapults, which essentially just allows it. Maybe you can explain it better than I, but it allows it. It's technological advancement, allows it to carry more aircrafts, I think, and allows it to refuel them quicker, recharge them quicker, so they can take off quicker, makes it more efficient in times of war. But it's also not nuclear powered, as you said, unlike
Mhm.
some of the American ones. But from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the most advanced warship carriers or aircraft carrier that is non-American, which is a pretty
Yeah.
significant development for the Chinese military. So maybe tell us more about this, because I know Trump mocked it, as he always does. And what does that say about the Chinese military? How capable is it? Because I see that some statistics, David, it's freaking scary. Now, maybe that you could,
Yeah.
maybe there's um, kind of disclaimers there that I don't know about. But when I read something like China could produce 300 times, and I'm not sure if that number is correct, but I remember it was 300 times more warships than the US. That's 300 times. That's mental. Drone capacity significantly more, and just
Yep.
a lot more advanced in energy production. We'll talk about later. But let's talk about the military. How capable are they? And are these headline grabbing news accurate?
So I think it's two ways to look at it. The first one is that especially as the United States goes, I think they no matter what happens in China domestically, the military readiness of the PLA is still increasingly becoming a problem for I think any country in the region. Japan is scared, obviously. South Korea, I think, should be scared. But the fact that you mentioned, like, I think that they have a much bigger reserve in mobilization of troops. They have crazy shipbuildings, the new aircraft carrier. A lot of this is screaming that they're gonna do something in Taiwan and screaming that something's gonna happen. So that's one side. I think the U.S. is so behind on competition against China. Uh, but I think obviously, there's still a discrepancy in terms of technology and the combat experience side as well. Uh, but I think China's trying to catch up, right? And again, this is all credit to Xi Jinping because he literally he wants to invade Taiwan, like no question about it. The other side I look at it, it's China still has a lot of issues. So for one, is that they have never had a real combat, massive scale combat experience. They've done a lot of simulations. They even have, these targets in the deserts in China that they put like a mock-up for the Taiwan uh, government buildings, but also the U.S. carriers. So they're doing a lot of simulation, a lot of training that they're trying to get ready for. But they've never had a real case, like real arms combat experience since they've come into power in 1949. So I think that's a big issue. And also the second is I think they have a lot of corruption within the military. That's also objective in the sense that like a lot of the generals are not combat ready. They're not confident in their combat abilities.
Hmm.
So while they do project their military as this like scary up and coming, second most powerful in the world, I think we also have to be realistic about their corruption
Yeah.
issues within the military.
What about their ambitions to invade Taiwan? I saw a report came in by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. It was a classified report that was leaked. It says China is rapidly expanding and modifying its civilian vessels, the roll-off ferries. Those big ferries that
Mhm.
they open the big door, and then you got the vehicles coming out of it and
Yep.
troops coming out of it, tank carriers. Um, in a potential Taiwan invasion. And experts say it signals 2027 readiness. It's a pretty vague word, readiness. Does that mean readiness means intent or not? But 2027 readiness, I know that's a date that's been mentioned by a lot of people in the
Yep.
US. We've got even Hexeth has mentioned it. Admiral Akolino mentioned it. That she's ordered the PLA to be ready by 2027 for an invasion. And timing seems right with the US distracted in the Middle East and Ukraine. From what you've seen, um, do you think 27 is possible? Because you're talking about how Xi Jinping is struggling with his hold on power. Not sure if that means that he's too busy and distracted with domestic politics to invade Taiwan, or if invading Taiwan might be a good idea now, considering it kind of because he's going to face resistance from the US, Japan, South Korea, Philippines. So that might bring the Chinese people in support of their leader of Xi Jinping. Now that there's a war like we saw in Ukraine, Russia. So not sure whether his domestic struggles mean an invasion of Taiwan is more or less likely in the short term.
I think if it was a year or two ago, I would say is 100% 2027 is going to be the line, the date. But now I'm quite skeptical whether or not this invasion is still happening. Just
Okay.
recently, I've noticed that the military activities have really gone down. Obviously, there was the military parade in September. That they were showcasing all sorts of things. So I think the getting ready for that, anticipating that invasion date is still a very good thing for the US and other countries to do, especially Taiwan. They should be upping their defense spending by a lot. But whether that actually happens not so it's like the preparing for invasion versus the actual invasion, that could be very much two different things. So preparing for the invasion means you get more domestic support, you get morale boosts, you get spending, you get preparation up until the point you say, yes, let's invade. But the actual invasion is a whole different story, I think. And it's not, like I mentioned, it's not something that I think the military is fully behind on.
Do you think he'd be scared after he saw what happened 2 years ago in Russia with Wagner and Prigozhin?
I it, I personally think he thought that that was. I don't think it was as impactful to him, because at least back during that time, because she had total control of the military. I don't think he thinks that that was going to happen, because that was around the same time that she had purged the entire rocket force. So he knew that there was nobody in China who had enough power that he didn't personally trust, that could do this, like Prigozhin. Because Prigozhin had his own, like Wagner's was you could say, I'd argue it was an independent thing that
Mm.
just had loyalty to Putin at the time. But the PLA has never been, even if right now when the PLA supposedly is not in Xi's hand, it is still loyal to certain people in the party. It is never going to say, I'm going to come out and take over and become like a military junta like the like Burma, right? Like Myanmar is, because it's always, since the founding days of the PLA, it is always the party's military. So without the party, the military, it doesn't exist. So it needs a civilian party official at the top. So it will never come out as an independent, like military dictatorship type of thing. So no matter what, even if she's not the one who's controlling it, somebody else is still doing that. So I think that that's a big difference between that and the Wagner situation.
How popular is Xi Jinping in China? Because obviously we can't get independent polls from there. Have you looked at some numbers that are not controlled by the CCP, and how do they look for Xi?
Well, honestly, if you ask like Cyrus Jensen or somebody, like Jackson Hinkle, he'll tell you it's 100%. But uh, i- if you actually read some of the stuff that comes out every day, um, from like just online posts and comments and chat rooms and whatnot, it's very difficult to say that he's still favorable, because you have a lot of things like the Winnie the Pooh meme, right? Like that came out in the early days in like 2013 or 2014. People meme that Xi Jinping, like for example, there's a thing that he said in the past. He says he carried 200 pounds worth of grains on his shoulder and he walked 10 miles of road without switching shoulders. So people started memeing him on that. So like there's a lot of like you could say that he's popular because he's literally the one that's, you don't get to vote in China, but he, there's nobody else, right? So you could say, he could argue he's the most popular, but you can't really gauge something in China like that. And I
Mm.
think the issue right now is, since the pandemic, a lot of young people have woken up to this
Yeah.
dictatorship. Yeah. Yeah.
What about all the rumors about him being sick, Parkinson's disease, heart failure, fatty liver because of a drinking? Any
Yeah,
truth in any of that?
people might think I'm like all about the rumors, but like a lot of this, so the rumors about him like having huge, like really problematic health conditions, I don't think they're that bad, because like I said, he's got the best medical to look after him. So I don't think he's in a in such a bad state that he's like, I need body doubles or something like that.
Maybe you could
I'm
tell
not
us
saying
about
it's not.
Project
Yeah,
981
yeah,
now.
yeah.
What's that?
So I did a video on this. Basically, there's some, now a lot of it has been deleted, but basically you can find these military hospitals that would do, it's called Keep the Leader Alive Till They're 150 program. And so basically it includes things like organ transplants. Um, One of the 6 ways they can improve the leader's body functions, one of them is like you have better sexual function. I'm like, why does an 80-year-old need better sexual function? But organ transplant, early onset disease diagnosis, comprehensive treatments, all those things. What they do is they have so the CCP official goes through a very frequent health checkups, right? And one of the best ways that you can eliminate a health problem, let's say you have a kidney failure, is to get a new organ. And so I don't know how much you know about the organ harvesting issue in China, but there's a plenty amount of organ supplies in China. So it started very early in 2005, 2006. The first people who were targeted for organ harvesting were Falun Gong practitioners. So there's a huge group in China that was outlawed in 1999, and many of them were taken to prison camps, labor camps, and whatnot. So those people in 2006, human rights lawyers did a lot of this investigation, and the China Tribunal also published a report on this. And then the Uyghurs were also locked up in concentration camps, a lot of them for their organs. And so there's videos out there on X that you can find. Basically, there are people that called into Chinese hospitals and say, hey, I need an organ transplant. And the doctor will literally say, come down, we can get you one in a week or two. Because if you know anything about organ transplants, in the US, you probably have to wait up to 6 months at least, or maybe a year or two for a compatible organ donor. For the fact that Chinese doctors can confidently say that you can get a new organ within a week or so, or 2 weeks, something is not right about that. Because to get an organ transplant, you got to have the right blood type, you got to match tissues, there's rejection issues. You can use drugs to, keep those rejection problems down. But at the end of the day, like, you need a really good compatible donor to give you that organ. And
So
China's
you're saying
is,
China's just got a lot of this illegal harvesting of people in concentration camps, potentially?
yes, but now, if you read Chinese comments, a lot of people are saying that they're walking organ donors, like regular people, not like prisoners who have religious beliefs, regular people on the street. Because recent years, a lot of kids have disappeared. A lot of high school students have disappeared. So there's like it's a meme now because people make fun of themselves in China, but they will literally say that I'm a walking organ supply for some official. And so it's like a lot of these aren't just unfounded, like, random things that people. Nobody goes around and claims that, yeah, I'm an organ donor for somebody important in China. It doesn't happen like that. But what so China has a lot of these, like, national health registries and medical records, health data in China that they collect, right? Why would you need that data? Well, my suspicion is that it's easy way for them to match blood type and organ tissue types. So for people that need it. Um, and regular people in China, if they view themselves as organ donors, I think something's very wrong. Because for Xi to publicly tell Putin that people can live till they're 150, I think the only way to do that is, unless you found the elixir of eternal life, organ transplant is probably the best way to solve partial health issues.
Yeah, that's in the Shanghai Cooperation Event Council, whatever it's called, the CSO, um, where this CSO, wasn't it? It's Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where Putin
SEO.
SCO, yeah, sorry, where Putin and Xi Jinping were walking and talking, but there was a hot mic
Oh,
moment where Xi Jinping told,
no, that was the military parade.
okay, yeah, in the military parade right
Yeah,
afterwards, um,
yeah.
in Shanghai,
No, in Beijing.
Beijing, and then Putin and Trump were walking, and then Putin and Xi Jinping were walking, and Xi tells Putin, there's a lot of developments, a lot of progress in this technology, and you can live till you're 150. Did that clip get leaked in China, get shared? How strong is that firewall in China?
Well, if you go on Douyin, you probably wouldn't see that clip. And even on X, there was a lot of people defending it, saying that, oh, it was just them talking about longevity and possible science discoveries. So they spent a lot of effort to minimize the impact of that. But like I mentioned again, a lot of times now it doesn't need necessarily that specific thing to be spread around in China for people to know what's going on anymore. One of the most telling case is recently, I don't know if you heard this, but there was a Chinese actor. He died. His name is Alan Yu. Have you heard something like that?
I saw it in one of your videos.
Yeah. So he really sparked a new wave of people, like going against the government because his death was very suspicious. There's a lot of issues with who was involved, a lot of cover-ups and whatnot. So even though that case itself is just a death of a celebrity, right? It somehow turned into a political issue. So today in China, the environment of public opinion and censorship, it's almost like the more you censor, the more people want to know. And so the more you censor something, the more people think that something's fishy. So by censoring itself, by censoring things regarding the organs, regarding the death of this actor, it makes people question that thing even more. So I think at the end of the day, what has happened is a lot of the censorship has backfired, and people happen to know more about Tiananmen Square in 1989, or what happened during the Cultural Revolution, because people started to censor these
So
topics.
would you say would people in China, what percentage of people would you say know about the Tiananmen Square massacre?
Oh, I'd say probably I'd say 30 to 40%. If you're in Beijing and you're around the age of 60 to 50 to 60, they could definitely know it, but they won't talk about it, obviously.
Would they talk about it while having a cup of coffee, or would they be that scared about even talking about it?
No, self-censorship is a huge thing in China. I think that's one thing that's different than Russia. I saw a lot of videos of people like willing to resist. Like you won't find that in China, because what they made it so it's if you oppose the government, you criticize it, you could possibly lose your job, or you could possibly be spoken to by the police, right? And then because remember I said that they target you because of the things that you fear. So if your livelihood depends on your job, or if your family's got you got to take care of your kids or your old parents. Nobody in China dares to risk something like I speak out for the sake of possibly losing their livelihood or
So
the possibility of losing their future.
you'd be scared about speaking so you're saying, but I'm saying if someone speaks in private in a home, would they even be scared to speak about among friends? Maybe one of them records. Is it that type of
Oh,
fear,
no,
or
no,
no?
no, no, no. It used to be like that, but now it's they will like bash and criticize the government. It's different now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
okay.
would
Now
they would even
it's
do
a
it
lot,
online.
somewhat different.
Now it's different. Yeah, it's a huge change. It's a huge change. Yeah,
Oh, wow, okay, that's interesting. So you're
yeah,
saying, could you explain that change a bit further? That's actually like, as a
yeah,
supporter of free speech, that's exciting. You're saying people are more openly criticizing the government now. It's what happened after COVID.
yeah. COVID was a huge turning point for a lot of people. Shanghai got locked down for a month or so, and since then, like you can't stop these type of things because when you so many people died during COVID that it almost and then the white paper protests that happened after that. People like just don't care anymore because the thing right now is when China was doing really well, like in the 20 after the especially after the 2008 financial crisis in the US, China was doing really well. China never had the 2008 Wall Street crash, right? So from 2008 to like 2019, China was in its golden age in terms of economic growth and everything. So during that time, you wouldn't hear as many people talk bad about the government because everybody had money, right? But then after COVID, people started to lose confidence in the government. People started to lose their jobs. Young people graduate and can't find a job. So you have a lot of resentment building up. So now when you talk bad about the government, it's like, so what? Like I already don't have a job. You can't fire me or you can't ban me. So what if I say bad things because I already don't have a future? So it's almost like in a state of people giving up, they don't really care that, something happens to me anymore. So that's where things are at. So, and then they also censor much more now after COVID, right? So when you censor something, then they're like, oh, look, another issue which I can only talk about using like abbreviations or acronyms or homonyms. But that's the only way I can do it. So they find different ways to use replacement words or emojis to talk about this thing, and you can't stop people anymore. So people are like, the Chinese internet is much less free today but also much more free because people have found different ways to talk about things
Do
they wouldn't.
VPNs work?
Yeah, VPNs work. It's more like people didn't care about these things before because they had money. You go out and drown yourself in materialistic possessions or fun times, but now because everyone's suffering, so you're like, okay, whatever. I'll just talk about this online or in person.
But then, so if you think about it, because I'm always fascinated in China how so many people, such a massive population, that's pretty open as a country, as an economy, you can travel in and out. It's not North Korea.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I've been to Shenzhen, I've been to Guangzhou, I've been to Shanghai. I learned Mandarin in university because I had one of my companies import a lot from Taiwan and China and South Korea. I've been to Seoul as well. That was my old life 10, 12 years ago. And so I know China, and just the technological advancements, and I'm talking
Mm.
12 years ago when I used to go a lot, is mind-boggling. So it's a
Mhm.
very open, advanced country, and I cover it a lot on my channel. So I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, I've never done an interview on this, so I'm really enjoying this conversation, is how does a society that's very well educated, very well advanced, one of the smartest societies in the world, militarily very powerful, economically very powerful, entrepreneurial society as well, how do people like this accept that level of censorship? So it's always in the back of my mind, how are they achieving it? And that's scary. What does that mean for other countries? Um, Maybe you can answer that question for me. How did China do it, especially with the advent of VPNs that allows people to be able to access the open internet?
So VPNs is sort of like the unspoken or the gray area, right? If like, seldom you'll get caught and get punished for it, but it is illegal in China. And it is something that you could possibly get fined or jail time for. But it's so the issue is this. There's a hypocrisy inside China. Even some of the most like top level CCP officials, they scale the firewall and they go read things and they don't even believe what they have. The way that China is able to keep its current system together is purely through the idea of party survival. It's all about making everything materialistic enough that you don't care about the ideological stuff or the higher spiritual stuff. Uh, in a free speech country, like you mentioned, there's a lot of focus. Let's say in the United States today, right? There's a huge argument, left or versus right, whatnot, about so-called Christian views versus say modern views, or however you want to. This is not about who's right or wrong, but there's a debate on the ideological level. In China, you'll rarely find those kind of debates happening. It's mostly people caring about, can I buy a house? Can I get a job that pays me double the salaries?
Hmm.
Can I move on to a higher level of society? What the CCP has done, so when Mao was in power, it was all about everybody's poor. We're all poor together. So to achieve, the socialism of equal wealth distribution to the path of communism. When he died and when Deng Xiaoping came into power, it was really about, we injected capitalistic investments into our society. We made you rich. So in turn, how can you preserve our party through that? Because I think at any given moment, it's all about the survival of the party, and for a lot of them, it's really just about the power and the hold
Hmm.
onto power. So when people are rich in China, and they were, 10 years ago, China was in its golden era in terms of, you go to Shenzhen, it's like digital totalitarian censorship, but at the same time, people were happy because they had money to spend, that kind of thing. Um, so
The
which is
amount of
why
people
now is
the amount of people that rose from poverty is insane.
yeah,
It's one of the most
yeah.
beautiful achievements of the country.
So, that's where a lot of times I argue with people on X. I'm like, it's not the CCP that alleviated people out of poverty. It's literally the amount of foreign government companies that came into China and like invested in China that made it grow so rapidly. So to the credit of the Chinese people, they have a lot of knowledge.
Wouldn't
They
the
have a
C
lot of
but
fast.
didn't the CCP have to build a system, like an economy, um, an atmosphere for these investors to feel confident to invest in China, to get the returns in China? So I think it's a lot more than, like, investors would only, it's a chicken and egg problem. Investors will only come into a country once they see um, the country change in the right direction. So wouldn't the
And that's
CCP have made the necessary changes for that to happen?
I think all they did was literally to say that we no longer hate capitalism. Because you see right now with Xi Jinping, that was actually a great example of what you just mentioned. His time in power, he's slowly crept back on. He's turned back against those capitalistic policies. He's saying that
Mm.
the state has to come first. So when you're right, but I don't think we should credit the policy of the leader to say that, well, it's just whether I like it or I hate it to decide whether a country should go this route
It's
or not.
also
I think
it's also which leader
if
as well. A lot of people are giving credit to Hu Jintao over Xi Jinping as well.
yeah, Yeah, exactly. And well, she's really the one that's why a lot of party officials also hate him because he made people less rich inside the party because he's going back to Mao Zedong's policies, right? It's like everybody stays poor. So in that sense, I guess you could credit the official who launched the reform and opening up. But I also think that also brought a lot of downside to China. It gave China a huge issue with corruption. So we talk about this corruption issue, like it didn't just happen today. It's been building up since people started getting rich. Because to me, I totally get where you're coming from too, because you mentioned, the policies, right? To me, the 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 people that were reaping the benefits were the people that had a higher goal in mind. Their main goal was to make sure that the Communist Party could survive and could build up, become better. Because you remember in
Yeah.
1989, after the Tiananmen Square massacre, the U.S. was ready to uh, stop working with China because of what they had done. But Deng Xiaoping's famous words were that we have to continue to hide and bide. We have to act like that we are trying to change, so that the world can forgive us for what had happened. Uh, and
Who said
turns
that?
out he was right.
Who said that? Who
Deng,
said that?
Deng Xiaoping said that the road to reform and opening up must continue. And
Mm.
so he also famously at the UN said that if one day China, I can't remember the exact word, but the meaning was that if one day China became the aggressor, then you should go ahead and correct us. Basically, it was his promise that China wouldn't change. It was because of these promises that the world said, okay, let's work with China, right? Let's make it join the WTO. Let's grant free trade policies to this country. Give it all of the. That's why there's a huge boom in Chinese investments, and because of that. So on the policy end, yes, you could have some credit to the government, but it was never their main goal. For them to get rich, it wasn't because they want the people to get rich. It was because they wanted the party to survive in a time that was quite dire to them.
Last question is one thing I've debated a lot of guests is the Chinese economy, the
Mhm.
state of the Chinese economy. You've talked about it briefly in a few of your videos. But what do you say is the biggest misconceptions about China? Because what we see online now, and even my account posts it as well, is just the technological advancements of the country, just how far ahead China is, how fast they can build a bridge, how many drones they could do in those drone shows,
Mhm.
how many robots they have, DeepSeek in their AI advancements, how fast they managed
Yeah.
um, to catch up to the US despite not having access to NVIDIA chips, the advanced chips. What would you say first? Is that image accurate? And what would you say is the biggest misconception about China right now?
I think there's I talked about this on my video yesterday. I said there's a duality of how we view China. There's a China that they want the Western or the foreigners to see. There's a China that they display for the domestic people. For us, really, myself included, what I see is a China that's really beautiful, a China that's rising, a China that's technologically advanced. But the real China, I think it's one where just today there was a bridge collapse. The bridge had just been put up last year, so within a year, this bridge already collapsed. It collapsed. It was like 750 kilometers or something like that. It was a massive
Oh
bridge.
wow!
I can't remember. It just collapsed.
Did
It's
it,
built a
how,
year ago.
how many? Did anyone die?
No, I think nobody was on there, or at least they claim nobody was on there. So, but it just shows you that the speed in which they put up infrastructure, it's not at the it's not quality, it's quantity. And but because they're always trying to show the world that they are up there, right? So, but reality, I think, is when you talk about the Chinese economy, the key factors they haven't been able to address since the pandemic is consumption issues. There's still,
Mm,
I think, a huge,
very
huge
reliant on the
problem with
US.
yes, export issues.
Mm,
The only area where I see China still has sort of a out stream is the exports. Without the export, I think companies aren't going back to China in the short term.
mm.
I think no matter what policies they decide to put up, I think they've lost the confidence of the companies, and there's just too many alternatives. I think that the fundamental issue of today in China is that they're high risk. Um, this
For
again,
businesses to expand into the region,
yeah,
into the
because you have
country.
alternatives now. Why go to China when you can go to Vietnam or India or
Oh, okay.
even
From a
Bangladesh?
manufacturing hubs, yeah, of course, of course. 'Cause especially
Right.
China, especially with the aging population, that's going to shrink their workforce significantly. Their their I don't know, the rate of reproduction, whatever you call it, is that 1
It's
for
even
every
lower.
woman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's at 1
Yeah.
for every woman has on average 1 kid. In the US, which is below the you need to have a rate of 2.3. Can't remember what the term is.
For growth,
A rate
right?
of 2. Yeah, for the population to grow. Anything below 2.3, 2.2, 2.3, the population is shrinking. The US, which is not doing too well, is at 1.6, 1.8. Japan is at 1 point something as well, below the US. But Japan is still better than China, which is at 1 because of the one-child policy. And that's a massive problem, workforce problem for the country, and a debt problem for the country as well. There's 2 potential solutions. I can't remember who was talking about this. Robotics, but it's going to take a long time to make enough robots to replace millions of people in the workforce. And the second one is importing a workforce, like countries like what happens here in Dubai. They get a lot of employees from places like India, Pakistan. Now, Dubai, very small country, tens of millions. So for Dubai to be able to import a workforce, a lot easier. But for a country the size of China to import a workforce, it's not feasible. There's not enough people around the country to be able to import a big enough workforce to compensate for the shrinking population. But anyway, look, that's a discussion for another day, man. I love your channel. I love the coverage that you've done, and maybe we should have you on the show again. Maybe do a history lesson on China. I just love the way you've explained Xi Jinping's rise to where he is today and the struggles he's facing, all the different theories, and why you're concerned. Because I do see in the press, it doesn't get that much coverage. Everyone's too busy with Gaza, Ukraine,
Yeah.
and the trade war. But we are seeing those purges happening. Those are facts. But everyone has different theories on what's really happening behind the scenes. So I like how you broke it down, David. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mario.